Hitler or Stalin? Who was worse? A simple question, but one that was often the topic of heated debate in the 1930s and 40s. The tensions over who was the lesser evil cooled down as the Holocaust was made public following the end of World War II. However, the answer is still more complex even to this day. Many scholars still don't believe a concrete objective answer exists, and there is ample data to support either side's argument. Today we set out to answer the question: of the two totalitarian dictators, whose policies were more detrimental to the citizens of their respective countries? Focusing on citizens of the USSR and Nazi Germany will provide an easier path to navigate when analyzing certain domestic laws and policies. For example, Hitler ordered his troops to treat the Polish people as subhumans, yet during the Nazi occupation of France, the local populace was not only left alone but often respected by their conquerors. Looking at the laws and structures directly influencing citizens of Germany and the USSR narrows down the topic to a manageable level.
Contrary to Stalin's economic policy of collectivization, Hitler pursued a strategy of public works, projected and rearmament, which quickly enhanced the struggling German economy by giving out government work contracts to businesses to stimulate their growth. Hitler passed the Unemployment Relief Act in June 1933, establishing the National Labor Service aimed at reducing unemployment and getting the German people back on their feet. These policies were celebrated and hailed as genius economics, whereas Stalin's communist policies were met with resistance in certain parts of the USSR.
Hitler appointed devoted Nazi Robert Ley to lead his new workforce and ensure order was maintained in his newly formed German labor service. The laws Hitler passed were disguised as championing workers' rights, when they actually eliminated their rights to strike entirely. Ley was a master of propaganda, and many of his speeches even mimicked ideas of communism.
Workers, your institutions are sacred to us National Socialists. I myself am a poor peasant's son and understand poverty. I know the exploitation of anonymous capitalism. Workers, I swear to you, we will not only keep everything that exists, we will build up the protection and the rights of the worker still further.
Stalin's ideas of collectivization were not well received in some areas, but the most notable was Ukraine. Resistance to Soviet ideas spelled disaster for the Ukrainians, as a policy of forceful starvation was imposed on the unwilling population. What ensued was the Holodomor, or the intentional starvation of some 6 million ethnic Ukrainians, according to modest estimates. Failing to accept communism was often a death wish, as grain could be requisitioned and never returned, causing mass starvation.
Can we advance our socialized industry at an accelerated rate while we have such an agricultural basis as a small peasant economy, which is incapable of expanded reproduction and which, in addition, is the predominant force in our national economy? Niet, we cannot. What then is the way out? The way out lies in making agriculture large-scale, in making it capable of accumulation of expanded reproduction, and in thus transforming the agricultural basis of the national economy.
Stalin's speech, given in front of the Communist Party Congress, condemned anyone who failed to give grain to the state as a kulak. What was previously a word for a wealthy peasant now became synonymous with traitor. Being labeled a kulak meant certain death, and 7 years later, Stalin's rage boiled over.
The Great Terror is often cited as one of Stalin's most vile acts against his own citizenry and party. Between 1936 and 38, around 750,000 Soviet citizens were executed, with more than 1 million more being sent to the Siberian work camps, known as gulags. Stalin's motivation for these purges was simple: eliminate all opposition left over from Lenin's government.
While Stalin's policies were often unpredictable, they always had a similar goal, which was to eliminate any potential threats to his power. This differs slightly from Nazi Germany, where Hitler's policies were aimed at consolidating the power of Germany as a nation, not just the power of the Nazi Party.
During World War II, the depiction of the Soviet Union and the Allied countries was often neutral, neither overly positive nor
A few moments later.
neither overly positive nor obviously negative. Part of the reason was that
Much later.
During World War II, the depiction of the Soviet
Later, that the old narrator got tired of waiting and they had to hire a new one.
During World War II, the depiction of the Soviet Union and the Allied countries was often neutral, neither overly positive nor obviously negative. Part of the reason was their alliance against Hitler, so they were technically on the same side as the Allied forces. The other reason is that the Russian atrocities were often hidden from public record and rarely revealed to the outside world. Many movies were made during World War II which extolled Russian heroism against the German army. But these movies were often overlooked, the underlying Soviet system present in the USSR.
In the public eye of the Allied nations, the Soviets often seemed like the lesser of two evils, but primary sources from within the two countries paint a much different picture. Varlam Shalamov, born 1907, was a Russian author who ended up on the wrong side of Stalin's wrath during the purges. He was arrested and sent to the gulags multiple times throughout his life for anti-Soviet writings and open support of former Soviet Party member Leon Trotsky.
For many months, their day and night, at the morning and the evening checks, innumerable execution orders were read out. In a temperature of 50 below zero, the musicians from among the non-political offenders played a flourish before and after each order was read. The smoking gasoline torches ripped apart the darkness. The thin sheet on which the order was written was covered with hoarfrost, and some chief or other who was reading the order would brush the snowflakes from it, with his sleeve so as to decipher and shout out the name of the next man on the list of those shot.
Germans who resisted the Nazi regime fared no better than the anti-communists in Russia. However, even some Germans who were indifferent to Nazism felt themselves being discriminated against if they were Jewish or outcasts. Ida Oner was an Austrian-German actress with Jewish ancestry who experienced discrimination early in Hitler's rise to power. She tried to flee Germany to Chile, but was captured and placed in a concentration camp.
Dann kam Kristallnacht. Ein Stein war in unser Schlafzimmer geworfen. Mein Mann sagt, raus, ich werde nicht in Deutschland bleiben. Doch konnten wir nicht verlassen, der Krieg war ausgebrochen und die Boote mussten wieder nach Deutschland fahren. Es dauert nicht lange für die Gestapo, meinen Mann und mich zu finden und uns zum Fußbüttel-Konzentrationslager in Norddeutschland zu senden.
Hitler and Stalin were both totalitarian leaders who abused their populations with famine, discrimination, and outright murder. But their domestic policies reflect two different attitudes. Hitler sought a racially united and purely Aryan German nation, whereas Stalin pursued an economically equal and classless society. These different goals manifested themselves in different policies. If you were an Aryan German, you likely had little to fear, and you may have even profited from the Third Reich. But if you were a kulak in Soviet Russia, you likely faced constant danger. Each country had their own in-groups and out-groups, and your status could mean your salvation or your demise. Ultimately, the two men were both evil, and comparing their tyranny will always yield the same result. Whether one was starved by Soviets because he was a Ukrainian, or shot by Nazis because he was a Jew, the result was the same. Millions of lives were taken at the hands of these two leaders, and their deeds can never be forgotten.